AP Biology, Chapter 22, Evolution, Part 7. Effects of selection. Now we're going to talk about what will happen to populations over time, depending on the type of selection they're undergoing. The first one we're going to talk about is directional selection. Now, if we have a bell curve of a population of animals, in this case, let's say we have giraffes, we're going to have some that have the average neck length. We're going to analyze necks. Somewhat smaller than average, and then somewhat longer than average. And this is just the kind of bell curve a population typically exhibits as far as traits. And we have the extremes. We have the shortest necks over here, very few with very small necks, and over here with very long necks. Now, in directional selection, we have selection in the direction of one of the extremes. So, for example, in the environment of giraffes, the acacia tree is their food source, and it's fairly high up. So the environment will determine what is the best adaptation for getting those leaves, and in this case, longer necks will do the trick. So the ones that have the longer necks are going to be more successful. They'll reproduce, and over time, the population will shift in the direction of the longer neck size. So here we have all different types of necks. We have the extremes being selected for, and they reproduce more successfully. Then eventually the population has longer necks. And then of that population, we have some that have still longer necks as a result of mutations. And if they survive and reproduce better than everyone else, they'll become the normal phenotype or physical trait that we see over time in the population of giraffes. So the effect of selection, where you're favoring just one of the extremes in a population, is called directional selection. And we're going to get some notes on that now. This is actually page 19. You may use more pages depending on how much space you need for your notes. And we're doing types of selection continued. And this is directional selection, selecting for one extreme in a population. It's also the most common we find in natural selection. Let's go and write down these examples. Example number 1, we have shorter necks, average necks, longer necks. We have giraffe necks being selected for in favor of the longer necks. That's why that's circled. Directional selection. Here we have another example of directional selection. Mice size. We have smaller mouse, average size mice, larger mice. We have selection for the smaller mouse. And again, this is directional selection in the direction of the smaller mouse because that provides a survival advantage. Example number 3, we're going to use a different kingdom, plants. Aloe vera lives in a dry environment, and thicker leaves conserve better water. So here we have thin leaves, we have thicker leaves, we have average leaves for aloe vera, and we have directional selection in favor of the thicker leaves. And as the last example of directional selection, we have slow gazelles, fast gazelles, average speed gazelles, and you have selection for the faster gazelles. Slower gazelles and average gazelles get eaten more frequently. All right, let's take a minute to get these 4 examples of directional selection. Back to our notes. The second type of selection is called stabilizing. In stabilizing selection, we're selecting for the average, and the extremes do not have a survival advantage. A classic example would be human birth weight, and that's hard to read there, so we're going to bring this down just a little bit. So human birth rate, or weight rather, about 9 to 12 pounds is average for humans. If it's too small, then the kid doesn't survive outside the woman. This is before medical treatment, of course. If the kid is too big, doesn't fit out through that small opening, isn't able to get out through the hips also. The bone structure doesn't let the kid out. So the kid doesn't survive then as well. However, the average size works best for most women's bodies. So that's what gets selected for in human birth weight, about 9 to 12 pounds. And the last type of selection is called disruptive or diversifying selection, where both extremes are favored. And this is not too common. However, if the extremes have a survival advantage, and then over time they become the most common phenotypes in the population, where the average doesn't have a survival advantage. Then you have two different phenotypes seen in a population. If these populations remain isolated, they can become different species over time. Rock pocket mice exhibit this. Basically, they live in an area where there's light and dark, but not very many average colored rocks. And the light colored mice can blend into the light rocks. The darker mice blend into the dark rocks. All right, let's get some more notes. And down here we have stabilizing selection, selecting for the average. Baby weight, average and 12 pounds selected for. Small babies, less than 7 pounds, don't survive outside the mom very easily without medical treatment. Now, of course, with medical treatment, we kind of break the rules here. We don't allow natural selection to let little babies die or big babies not get out. We, of course, invented methods to make sure they don't die. All right, and then we have disruptive selection, selecting for both extremes. Both light and dark colored rock pocket mice are selected for, where the average color is not able to blend in either environment. All right, pause if you need to, and then we'll move on. All right, so now we're moving from natural selection to genetic drift, and we're going to get some details on how this works. Remember, genetic drift is a results in a change in genetics, not due to natural selection, but due to chance. Now, there's two types of genetic drift that we're going to talk about. The first one is called the founder effect, and the second one's called the bottleneck. Founders are a group that starts something. So anyone who's a founder of a business, or in this case, we're talking about a colony that's being started. The founders are the ones that, like the founding fathers, they're the ones that started our country, like George Washington and Ben Franklin. So the founder effect is when a small group splinters off and starts a new colony. And if they do, they only take the alleles or the genes and the traits that leave with them. So let's say we have a population of birds, some red, some yellow, and a group leaves and colonizes a new island. Now, if all those birds are red, it wasn't due to selection that the yellow birds didn't start or pass on their genes in this new island environment. It was due to luck, and it was just a chance event that the alleles, the genes, the traits of being red were all the only thing that came to this island. So as you can see, we have yellow disappearing as a phenotype on this island, but not due to natural selection, but due to chance as a result of only the genes going with the founders being found in the new environment that they settled down in. A bottleneck is some factor or disaster that also reduces the population to a small number and also will eliminate some of the genes from a gene pool, some of the traits from the population as a result of disaster. So think of bottlenecks as a disaster, reducing the number of traits. The founder effect is a splinter group founding a new area and only taking the traits that the group has with them. All right, founder effect, got some examples here. When a new population is started by only a small group of individuals, just by chance, some rare alleles may be in high frequency, depending on what's taken with the group. Can skew the gene pool or the genes found in that population, in the new population that splinters off and starts a new colony. Human populations start off from a small group of colonists. An example is the colonization of the New World, especially by the Native Americans that came from Asia. Those deer, by the way, are all white because that's the only alleles they took with them. So they are all albino. All right, so distribution of blood types. We have O blood types found mainly in South America. And what we think happened is that the Asians that went across the land bridge colonized North and South America, and they eventually became the Native Americans. They were isolated from the Asian populations over time, so there are some differences, but they're closest genetically to Asian populations. Then what was thought to have happened is a group of these founders colonized all of South America. And when they did so, they didn't take A, B, or AB blood types with them. They only took the O blood type. So when they had kids and reproduced themselves over countless generations, all the kids also had O blood type. And if you remember from blood types, it's two blanks. It's like blank blank to get O blood. You don't have any alleles for any kind of cell marker on the outside of red blood cells. So all these people got their alleles for making red blood cells from that small group that founded this area, and now the population doesn't have AB or AB. All right, the B blood type is the original one found in native populations, and that did not get carried over to South America. All right, so out of Africa. Now, we have the archaeological digs and other things. The oldest human-like fossils found in the world are found in East Africa. This is thought to be the home of humanity. And based on tracing the archaeological sites as well as genetic markers that we'll talk about in a future class called haplogroups, we have people leaving Africa and settling in Europe as well as Asia. Then there was isolation of the Europeans that gave rise to Caucasians, and isolation of the Asians that led to the Asian characteristics that we have in their population. Some of those people came down to Australia, became the Aborigines. Then we have a group of Asians moving across the land bridge, possibly when this was frozen over in the last couple ice ages, and colonizing North and South America. All right, bottleneck. A bottleneck effect is when a large population is drastically reduced by a disaster, and then you eliminate some of those alleles just by chance. So if you look at the bottom here, we have an example. Let's say we have the parent population here. All the little different colors represent different genes for different traits. And let's say we just have a couple survivors. Let's say after the disaster of some kind, a forest fire or earthquake or whatever, these are the only ones that survive, taking only the blue and yellow alleles with them. And then they reproduce, they pass on their genes and have kids, and eventually, you have the blue and yellow allele in the population, but since the red was lost not due to natural selection but due to chance, due to a disaster, the new population that reproduces doesn't have that allele anymore, and that's called a bottleneck. Example is cheetahs. All cheetahs share the same number of alleles. There's less than 1% diversity in all cheetahs. They're almost like they're all identical twins. It's thought that they were reduced to one family, and that family interbred to bring them back from going extinct. They suffered two bottlenecks, one 10,000 years ago during the last ice age, and last 100 years as a result of poaching and loss of habitat. So they've been hit pretty hard. And when you eliminate all the other members of a population, you take those alleles with them, and since there's not very much genetic diversity in these cheetah populations, diseases are very a big concern, because if one cheetah is susceptible to the virus genetically, then they're all going to be susceptible to a virus or a bacteria. So that's not good. And also with inbreeding, when you have too much inbreeding, you end up having a lot of negative alleles as a result of mutations found in the offspring. So there's a lot of more birth defects in a inbreeding population. Alrighty, let's get back to our notes. So now we're into genetic drift. This is page 20. Change in genes, traits due to chance. Two types of genetic drift. We have the founder effect. Go ahead and pause at this time. And then we have the bottleneck. And pause at this time. This ends chapter 22, part 7 of your notes for evolution.